everyone, wherever you are in the world. I'm Mark Victor Hansen, as you know, the creator of all these great books, Chicken Soup for the Soul series, 1 Minute Millionaire, Ask, all that. But today I've got the privilege and honor that I'm thankful for that I get to introduce one of my great friends to you that you may or may not know, Doug Wing, the Little Giant Ladder Company, which was founded by his father. And he has just created a book that is going to cause you to have giant success because the book's easy to read, easy to understand, easy to use, and will have you have exponential growth in your business as you climb the ladder of success. With that, let me welcome my car, and I got two things on my mind. My friend Doug Wing, who is also a car aficionado, which we'll talk about before this is over. Doug, how are you doing today?
Mark, unbelievable. How are you?
Wonderful. Tell us why you wrote this stellar book, which I went through, and I got to tell you, it's got excellent pictures and beyond phenomenal affirmations that if everybody lives in one of your dad's affirmations, they will skyrocket straight up in success.
Well, I had the amazing opportunity to work for a guy who's was my dad, but also
Hal Wing.
Yeah, Hal Wing, and it was an amazing person, amazing businessman, a great entrepreneur. And so as I worked with him for 45 plus years, I learned all these things about him. Some of the things I learned about him after he passed away, but most of them I learned watching him in business, how he treated people, most importantly, how he treated his employers, but his vendors, his customers, everyone. And so after he passed away, I thought, well, he did have a book that he was writing and he passed away. And I thought, you know what, somebody needs to finish this book. And so I decided to do that. And I'm also excited because this is the third book that we are doing together, Mark. And thank you. I'm so excited to have everything with Mark Victor Hansen Library now.
Beyond excited for me. I want everyone to go into it. You've got a great foreword written by our mutual friend, Jeffrey Gittimer, who wrote the little red book called The Bible of Sales. And, he did a stellar foreword for you. Then you start with pictures of you and your dad and mom, and you show even the pictures of your dad, which I thought, boy, he was a senior and he's popping wheelies on a motorcycle. Now, I used to be a motorcycle aficionado. I had my first motorcycle at 14. I won't do that anymore. I'm now 77 years young, and I'm only 77, but going to 127. And your dad just had such vim, vigor, vitality, and he went up and down a few times, but all of a sudden he figures there's one way to become a stellar success, and that is, why don't we try an infomercial? So talk to that, because most people say, hey, Doug, are you nuts? You can't sell ladders on an infomercial. What are you thinking?
Well, kind of the backstory to that infomercial is the company was, pretty seasoned at that time, and our patents were expiring. And we actually had a company come out of China and knock our product off. It looked exactly like it. Okay. But it was for half the price. And some people at Little Giant started panicking. And there was only one guy that didn't. I was a little bit nervous about this because this company ran a full page ad in the USA Today and had it looked exactly like our ladder, and it was $199. And we were at about $400. And so Hal Wing didn't panic, but he knew what he could do. He knew the ladder, if you could show the ladder, and we did that for years and years at trade shows, that it was successful. And so he thought, okay, we could do an infomercial about this. And I know the person that's going to be in it. It was my father. That was he was in there with a couple of guys from, Al, it was, what's his name? Richard Karn. And then another lady from Home Time on PBS. But what happened is the only bad thing is we didn't have the money to do it at that time. The company had gone down. As you mentioned, there were ebbs and flows in the business, and we were down at our very lowest point. And so my dad, being the risk taker that he was going to be $1 million at this time to do this infomercial. And he said, I'll give you the $1 million, but I want the money back in 6 months. And so he actually leveraged one of his farms he had. And he did say this, he said, I'd like to have $10 for every ladder that I sell on the infomercial. And so they went and shot the infomercial. And at that time we were doing about 20 million in sales. Again, it was at one of the lowest points of the company. And once they did the infomercial, it 4 times our sales in 1 year. And the next year, it's 4 times our sales again. We went from producing about 400 ladders a day, working 4 10-hour shifts to 7,000 ladders a day. We were working every day of the week. So we were working 6 days a week with 3 different shifts. And that in itself is incredible how the company did that and got enough manpower and, machinery and all of that stuff. But it was a huge success. Hal rolled all the dice. He got his money back in 6 months, and he made a few dollars, on that $10 deal. It paid off big time for him.
Talk about, by the way, I know that we're getting into weeds here, but I just want to hear it. How do you go from a little company, by the way, 400 a day is seriously big business, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you that aren't doing it, that's a lot of work and a lot of business. How did you buy more buildings? How did you get enough material? How did you buy the machinery? All that stuff.
Well, we had a big enough building, but we went from 1 to 3 shifts. And then what we did was we took the guys that we had long established and put them on the newer shifts as supervisors. And we were hiring people left and right. And we needed more bodies. We needed obviously more capacity to, with materials and different things like that. But the team we had was incredible to be able to order and get everything up and running at that time. And then, we had to go to the banks and say, hey, we need a bigger line of credit and all this stuff. And so it was pretty incredible how the whole team put it all together. But really the guy that took the risk was Hal, and it paid off big time for our company.
Well, your dad teaches that all change starts with me, inside out. What behaviors did he teach that set those standards of excellence in your company?
Well, he had an incredible self-belief, as we kind of talked about a little bit earlier, when some of the people in the company were doubting, are we going to make it? And he's like, we're always going to make it. And so he had this incredible self-belief, but his work ethic was really, really incredible. And just, the perfection also that he demanded. He used to say, every ladder that goes out of here has my name on it, and it's got to be perfect. So his excellence was, we've got to produce the finest products out there, and no matter what the cost. And, in most situations, Little Giant was 2 or 3 times the cost of other ladders, but because of our quality and the patents that we had and the versatility and the innovation that we would put in our products, we were successful even at those higher prices.
How did you sell to the public? How do you teach quality? You know quality when you see it. Like, if you're looking at a Rolls Royce, you go, whoa, that is a quality car. But because you were the Rolls Royce of ladders, how did people see that? How did you sell that idea?
Well, one of the ways that we did that was every year, all the salespeople would have to work in manufacturing for 1 week. And as we did that, they would point, they would learn exactly how they were welded, why they did these double zig pass welds, why we used solid rivets instead of hollow rivets that a lot of companies use, our materials, the bracing that we use, those types of things. So Hal was really smart. He, doing that, taught the salesman, okay, this is why we build them this way. When someone comes in, hey, why do you do it this way? And they could tell them why. And then the other thing that was really helpful was it gave the salespeople appreciation of those that worked every day in manufacturing, busted their rear ends, and worked really hard for us and produced the quality product. But it really was, the secret was in the demonstration of the product, and Hal came up with this really amazing demonstration. But one thing I loved about my father is that he said, we will never, ever badmouth another competitor, which they always did. Oh, Little Giant's too overpriced. They're too expensive. We're just as good. And we never did that. We always took the high road, and we would show the differences in the product, but we wouldn't badmouth them. We would just say, oh, look at their thickness compared to our thickness, and look at the way we weld these. And they don't weld because they don't know how to weld, so they rivet the rungs on and they break off and different things like that. So we took the high road and just showed the differences. And another thing was our products were so good that once they got out there, people would actually brag about them and tell other people, hey, these are the best ladders in the world. So our quality was always there, and my dad would never, ever compromise on the quality.
I can tell you, as somebody who does have your ladders in my house, I bought them. I didn't get them free from you, although I could twist your arm and probably got one, but that's not the way to do it, right? Because I trust you. And the truth is, truth sells quality. So you guys have climbed the mountain, but then you kept climbing the mountain. Talk about, that looking backwards of how you had the guts and the ability to keep making it more and more excellent and just keep selling and serving everybody with it?
Well, really, the man behind the company, the man that started all Halloween, he had amazing confidence, not an arrogance, but a confidence in himself and a confidence in his products. And that really did come down to the other employees. We knew that Hal had our back, that he was, that he believed in us. And um, he loved his employees so much. There was one gentleman that worked for us for many years. He said, I knew Hal Wing loved me so much. And because I knew that, that made me want to work for him even more and harder and put in the effort, because Hal was really a unique boss. He always said that his most important asset, or any business's most important asset, was the employee, not the patents, not the products, not the buildings, but the employee. And if you could build the employees and treat them like they needed to be treated, they would climb a mountain for you every day when they come in.
I'm going to go to one of your dad's quotes in a second, but I got to echo what you just said. During the Depression, Mitzi Perdue, who wrote my biography, Relentless, fascinating. Her dad started the Sheraton hotel chain. He built 400, but he gave free lunches when everybody was starving to the 400 employees in the first hotel. And he said, look, we're going to have quality for you, and that quality you're going to give to every one of the people that stay here. And the hotel chain was the first franchise that went vertically straight up. Well, now it's been bought by your neighbor there, Marriott. But fascinating how that works. But your dad said, look, a job worth doing is worth doing right. Talk to that, please.
Yeah. So during the infomercial, on one of these shifts, I think it was the graveyard shift, my dad was really intuitive. He had a bad feeling one night when he was just sitting in his house. He goes, I'm going to go down and check on the graveyard shift. It was 5 minutes from his house. And he went down there, and what he found, that the ladders that they were producing were junk. So he stopped production, and they had already built. They were not up to house standard. Yeah. And so the quality was not right, and he stopped production. They have a big bell in manufacturing. He rang the bell. Everybody came. And he said, tonight we're going to scrap 400 ladders. You all are going to cut those up and throw them in the bin, and you're going to start over. These are not up to my standard, and we are going to produce quality products that are up to our standards going forward tonight. Do you guys all understand that? And everybody said, yes, sir, we understand it. So that night they cut up 400 ladders, cut up all the aluminum, threw it in the recycled bin, and started over again. So that was so important to my dad. And the one thing that I love about Little Giant is that we never, ever lost a case in court. We were always producing ladders that were, the Ocean, the ANSI standards were here, and Little Giant would come over here and say, we're going to build them like this. And so safety was always a big thing for us. We didn't want to have anybody get hurt or killed on a ladder, because one person in the United States dies as a result of a ladder fall every day. And so it was big for us that we kept people safe, and they went home to their families every night. And I think that was really one of the things that Hal stuck with, and he demanded it, and it paid off.
Boy, I've never heard that. I believe it. I mean, because people climb on ladders for everything in the house, to change a light bulb on the outside of the house, to fix the roof, to clean the gutters, all kinds of stuff. I mean, we have 3 of your ladders in different sizes even. So talk about the culture and the community and what quiet generosity would offer your dad, and why he was so philanthropic.
Well, one of the things that I've been actually next week in Utah, I'm speaking at the Utah Recycling Coalition, and so I'm working on a presentation. And one of the things that I talk about is the culture at Little Giant. And one thing that was amazing again, we talked about the employees, how important they were. There was a situation that happened several years ago. We had a young couple, a young guy that was working for us. I'd say he was in his mid 30s, maybe early 30s, and his wife had a stroke. She had 4 kids. And my dad went to him and said, look, your family right now needs you. This is very important. You need to go home and take care of your wife. And what I'm going to do is, your job is secure. I'm going to continue to pay you to stay home and take care of your wife and kids. Once your wife gets back up on her feet and everything's all better, you'll come back, you'll have your job, and everything will be great. But can you imagine your boss today, something like this happening? And he says, go home, take care of your family. You're going to keep getting your paycheck every 2 weeks. And once your wife is healthy and back again, come back to work, your job will be secure. Hal did that so many times, and he just loved his people and took care of them. And they were loyal to him for many, many years. A lot of them stayed their whole career at Little Giant. That was one of the things that was really unique about the culture. Everybody got their birthday off with pay at the company. Hal would actually go to Lake Powell on his houseboat and with his boat, his ski boats, and he would take 2 or 3, 4 people, and he'd say, hey, you want to go on vacation with me and go skiing for a week or 2? And they'd say, yeah. And he'd say, oh, by the way, I'm going to pay you to go with me and do this, and you're going to get paid the whole time you're having a skiing vacation at Lake Powell. He did that all the time. And that, for those reasons, he really cared about his people. He had 400 employees. He knew every one of them by their name, knew something about them. One thing I loved about my dad is most people go in the front door that own the company, and they go in their office and close the door. Hal parked his car in the back, walked through, talked to everybody as he came through and checked on people. And then he would go into his office. He did that every day.
That's called management by wandering around. So two things. The world's best management guy is Peter Drucker, Dr. Peter Drucker. I got to see him a couple of times. He'd always have his pipe and go, but he'd say a company makes it based on marketing, which we're going to have you talk about, and innovation. How do you keep innovating a ladder? Because a ladder is a ladder is a ladder.
Well, one of the benefits that we had when we did the infomercial, we had so much cash that we decided, since we learned from, see, this is the thing I loved about Hal, is he lost the company once. And I asked him, I said, wasn't it harder to do it the second time? And he goes, no, it was easier. And I'm like, how was it easier? And he said, because I remembered every mistake I made the first time and I eliminated those. And so it became a lot quicker the second time. And so we learned from our mistakes. We only had a couple of patented products. And so after the infomercial, we thought, if we're going to be smart about this, let's take some of the money that we have and invest it in innovation. Let's bring on some more engineers, and let's go out and talk to customers and see what they want, not what we think is cool in ladders, but what they need and want. And that's how we came up with that new lightweight fiberglass ladder that really revolutionized the industrial commercial market. And I was actually tasked the last 5 years of my career with selling to the cable and telecom companies. Now, keep in mind, our ladders were twice as much money, but the cable companies came to us and said, we have a 100-pound ladder. Can you take it to 50 pounds? If you can, we'll buy all of your ladders exclusively. You imagine taking a ladder and cutting the ladder, the weight in half, and it was double the price. We sold, in 5 years, we sold $150 million worth of ladders to the Comcasts of the world, the cable companies, and took over the whole market. I remember the number one ladder company in the world at that time, Warner, the CEO walked into my booth at the cable show and he said, man, Doug, you didn't take just a small part of the market, the cable market. He goes, you took it all. And he said, we're going to try to get it back. And I just said, well, best of luck to you. But the funny part about that is 5 years before that, these cable companies went to Warner and said, build us a lighter ladder. We need this. We want this. And they said, we will do it. And they lied. They didn't do anything about it. And so again, when someone comes to you and says, will you help us? Will you build this? Well, the lesson we learned too is keep your word, build the product, and we got the business, right? And we listened to the customer.
So you made it out of fiberglass, so it was lighter, and it had more tensile strength, so it could carry a guy that weighs 200 or 300 pounds up the ladder that great distance, and no breakage or foot bending or anything like that. Oh, good.
We can't. That's a great question. We came up with a new composite material, and all the ladder companies were buying our ladders and trying to reverse engineering, and they could never figure it out, and they still can't. When you see a Cox cable truck driving through your neighborhood, Scott, Mark, because we have them here, they all have those, and they're high-vis green ladders. Those are all Little Giants. And so I sold those to Ted Merriman, the director of safety at Cox in Atlanta, Georgia. And all the other companies came along as well because they saved. What we found out is by reducing the weight of the ladder by 50%, they reduced their workman's comp claims, shoulder injuries, back injuries, dropping ladders on people's houses and cars. They reduced.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they reduced it by millions and millions of dollars. That price of the ladder, twice as much, was a drop in the bucket. They eliminated so many accidents by going with our ladder. And so again, by us listening, building what they needed, They're still buying them and using them, and it was incredible.
By the way, the same thing happened in my friend Bill Allen, who owns Hawaii Care and Cleaning. But what happened is that people hurt their backs, and who built the cleaning machines that you clean marble and floors with, men or women? And the answer is men. And were they heavy or light? And the answer, he said, they're heavy. And he said, what do we got? Well, he said, I got mostly women working for me, like 1,500 women every day in all the 4, 5, and 6-star and 7-star hotels in Hawaii. And he said, so I invented this thing and it only weighs 2 pounds. And the industry say couldn't do it. Well, now, first year he did $50 million. It's called IMOP. Same thing you did. Is it was impossible to do, a ladder that's lightweight. Well, no, it's not impossible to do anything if you think about it deeply enough. Hire the best engineers, hire the best designers, hire architecture of ladders and all that. So,
well,
any other innovations you did? Because that one's just great. I can see that the guys have to say yes, because you can't have people at Cox Cable or anywhere else be down because it hurt their back. I hurt my back once and it sucks.
Yeah, we did another thing too, which was called the ground queue. So we put on the last ladder, on the last rung of the ladder at the bottom, what we found out was that people were missing that last step on the ladder. And they would go between the second to the last to the bottom and they'd tweak their backs. And so we put a little clicker on the last step of that ladder that every time they stepped on it, it'd go ching, it'd make a little click sound. So they realized, okay, the next step is going to be the ground. And so little things like that we did that were just incredible, that we'd put a level on our extension ladders so that people could, because a lot of times people have it too high and then it goes backwards, or most of the time they have it too far out and the ladder kicks out. And so if we put this bubble level on, a simple thing, right? We put a level on, the gut technician can look at it and say, oh, I'm level, or I'm not. And he'll pull it out and he's level. It didn't cost that much. And it was just something that they could do and look at it really quickly. And
did you do it at the top and the bottom of the ladder? So when they put the ladder up and it's leaning, do they know at the bottom that it's level?
We put it in a spot that's up a little bit higher, but they could see it at eye level, that would show them where the ladder was level. And it was pretty awesome. But that meeting, well, where we got that lightweight ladder was we were at a big meeting and the CEO, the safety people from Comcast and another cable company came up and said, we need this ladder. And our CEO, Ryan Moss, said, we're going to build it. He promised them we would build it. And when they walked off, I said, Ryan, we don't even make fiberglass ladders. And he goes, we're going to figure it out. And so again, the way that attitude came from Hal Wing, like, we'll figure it out. If customer wants it, we will build it.
So let's talk about it from what you just said, 3 great innovations that were innovations sell, right? And it made it easier for the customer to buy. Explain that so everybody else can use it in their company. How do you look for those innovations?
Well, really, you can do it in a couple ways. One is a lot of times companies will just say, oh, this is a neat gadget or widget. Let's build these. And maybe even people don't even want them. And so by us going to the customer and saying, what do you guys need in a ladder? What's lacking in the ladders you have? And they said, oh, they're too heavy, or we need this feature or that feature. And so by listening to the customer, whatever industry you're in, go to your customers and ask them, what is your pain point? What, are you dealing with right now? Well, in the cable business, we're dropping ladders. And the number one and number two things that were hurting the cable companies were ladder falls, ladder accidents, ladder strains, and their technicians were wrecking their vehicles in, backing into stuff, other people's cars. So those are 1 and 2. So we were in the top 2. And so we were like, okay, we can help you fix that. We made a lighter ladder. And so as whatever business you're in, talk to your customer, make sure you're talking to your customers and asking them what they need, what they want, and then make that for them. If they need it, they're going to buy it from you. So I think listening, most salespeople just want to talk all the time, but listen to the customer and then get them what they need.
So your dad's quote was, you are responsible for your own success. If nobody else can fix it, you figure out how to fix it. Talk to that, would you?
Yeah, exactly. And I think especially today with employees, I'm so glad I don't have employees today anymore, but it's hard with what happened through COVID. And then, we had the shutdown and people just kind of disappeared. A lot of workers disappeared, and it's hard to get people who want to work nowadays, but you've got to find people that care. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking, okay, if I walk into a McDonald's or a Burger King, and then I walk into an In-N-Out burger or a Chick-fil-A, I can see the difference in the employees with an In-N-Out or a Chick-fil-A versus a McDonald's or a Burger King or something like that.
That fast.
And it's, yes, that fast. And for me, what it is it's the people that they choose as their employees, they select. And then it's the training, obviously. You can train people to your culture and the way that you want things handled and the way you want to treat people. You can train, those people to do that. And so I think it's getting the right people in the right seats, and you may have to pay them a little bit more, but then also making sure they're trained to your culture and the way that you do business.
By the way, I'll talk to Chick-fil-A because we're going to do a book that they're going to sell at their Chick-fil-A's in the MarkVictorHansenLibrary.com, which I'm so thankful for. It came to us in last couple of days, and it's really exciting. First of all, as you know, I won the Horatio Alger Award, where it means, I came from rags to riches, got a gold medal in the Supreme Court from Judge Clarence Thomas. 10 of us win it, but Truett Cathy, the guy who started that, and he takes care of every orphan in Georgia. But what happens is at Chick-fil-A, the way they work is that if you come and learn the culture and then say, I want a store, it only costs you $10,000, but you got to sign an agreement that you're going to run the store perfectly for the rest of your life, and you'll make $1 million or more a year. Is that cool?
Yeah, and his book is incredible. I read that.
Oh, I love it.
I have that still, and I still read it every once in a while because he's an amazing guy. His religion, his giving, he's a giver, just like Hal was. It's incredible.
So talk about, your dad said passion transfers at the cash register. What excites you about your offers that the customer can actually feel? Talk about how that works.
Well, enthusiasm, obviously, if you're enthusiastic and you believe in your product, that's going to carry forward to other people. And so Hal had this incredible enthusiasm and drive and can-do spirit. And as I mentioned before, his attitude, his just positive attitude, it wasn't an arrogance, but it was a very, very positive, hey, we're going to do this. He had goals. He had dreams. In fact, my aunt, when I interviewed her for this book, she said, your dad was 12 years old and we were walking down the street in Springville, Utah. Now imagine this, a 12-year-old. And my dad looked up on that mountain where they lived in Springville, and he told his sister, when I'm grown, I'm going to have the highest house on that hill. The biggest house on that mountain is going to be mine. Now, how many of us at 12 years old have a vision like that, right? And Hal had the highest house up there, the most beautiful home, the biggest home up there. But at 12, here he is going, I'm going to have this. And he did. And so, that energy, that passion, that enthusiasm, the way he led the company of, he had a saying that said, when people tell me something can't be done, I'm ready to go. And so the worst thing you can tell Hal is it's impossible. I remember I went on a motorcycle ride with my dad and my brother and another gentleman one time. We were riding our Harleys through the hills and pulled up to stop. And I said to my dad, I wonder how fast my bike will go. And he goes, get off of it. And he came back about 5 minutes later and he goes, it'll go 120. And so
I got a hitchhike on your 12-year-old because we're on with our son Preston, and we've got 3 grandkids with him and that we love. And at 12 years old last year, I asked Everett, who was 12, I said, never thinking he could answer, what do you want to be when you grow up? He said, well, Grampy, at age 18, I'm going to make $30 million a year and I'm going to play for the Phoenix Suns. And he does 100 free throws a day. And I said, and then what? He said, well, 30, I think I'll manage them. And then I said, then what? Not thinking he'd have an answer. He said, then at 45, I think I'll buy them. I said, boy, that is $4.8 billion. And this guy is not going to help you. He said, no, I'll have the money. Don't worry. And that's exactly it. So give me, because we're going to close here in a minute, give me the 3 greatest principles that are in this book that are transferable to everybody else that Hal taught, if you would, please.
Well, the first one is that if you own a business, your employees are your most valuable asset. And so, but this goes back to relationships as well. Think about your family relationships, or everything is about relationships, your customers, your clients, your your vendors, everything. Hal would say, if it's not a good deal for everybody around the table, including the people that sell us stuff, it's not a good deal. If he got the lion's share, or if they did, it's got to be a good deal for everyone. And so I think it's all about relationships. It's all about how you treat people. That's number one. And then I'm thinking too, the quality of the product was big for us. We never ever strayed from that. We never had a recall. We never lost a case in court. We stuck with what one of our core principles was: the value, the quality of and the branding. That all played into it. People knew Little Giant was, yes, it was the most expensive ladder, but the quality was there. They lasted longer. The quality was better. And then I think that Hal's giving heart really, he's always said none of the things that we have are going to be even worth anything 100 years from now. What really matters is, what we think, how we act, how we treat people. And he was what I loved about my dad and my mom is they did a lot of this anonymously. I didn't find out about this until later when I wrote the book and people said, I have a story for you. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was on a Skype Zoom, and this lady said, I'm from Springville. And she was younger than me, but she said, my dad and your dad were best friends. Do you want to hear a Hal Wing story? I said, absolutely. So keep in mind, my dad passed away in 2012. This lady tells me that her dad and my dad were car enthusiasts, motorcycle enthusiasts, and that her dad was a real estate agent in the late 70s during the Jimmy Carter administration when interest rates went up to 20%. His entire business was almost in a collapse. Nobody was buying houses. It was too much. The interest rates were high. The economy was in the tank. And he had this beloved car. Her dad did. And he came to the conclusion he had to sell this car. She said, one day your dad came over to the house, knocked on the door, came in, talked to my dad and said, Jim, I understand you have to sell this car. And he knew that his friend Jim loved this car. And he said, yep, I got to sell it, Hal. I have no choice. I got to feed my family. My dad says, I've got a deal for you. He said, I will buy the car. What's your price? He says, I'll buy the car from you. I'll put it in my garage. And when the business picks back up and the economy turns around, I'll sell you the car at exactly the same price that I bought it for. So Hal buys the car, stores it for him. Guess what? President Reagan comes in, the economy turns around. A couple of years later, he tells my dad, hey, Hal, I'm ready to buy the car back. My dad hands him the keys, he hands him a check, and he got to keep his car. Now, again, this is just a story about a guy that loved his car, but again, I never heard that story before, and that's who Hal Wing was, a true friend, and he'd help people. And he knew how important that car was to his friend Jim, and he helped him out, and the rest is history.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think the absolute world of Doug writing about his dad. I hope all of you will write about your dad, but I want you to become a giant success, and to be that, get a copy of Giant Success, take a picture of the QR code, and make sure you write down DougWing.com so you can go to his website and look at everything. And his dad was one handsome guy just like he is. I want your success to not be just success. I want it to be giant success. So go today to Amazon and get the book, Giant Success. Again, Doug, thank you for doing it with us. Thank you for sharing. And a real recipient is every one of you that reads it and then he's got all the quotes in the back of the book. Read a quote a day, put it on a little 3x5 card, read it 5 or 10 times until it brands itself into your brain, etches itself into the fabric of your being, and you, I promise, will become a giant success. And I hope somewhere along your path, you get to meet and hear Doug Wing talk. Thanks, Doug, for being with me again.
Thank you, Mark. I'm enjoying working with you right now. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day.
You too, everybody.